Chapter 23. Emily, every time Clark was in the car, morning, afternoon, evening, he was shouting at someone, arguing about something, giving orders on what had to be done as soon as possible. He seemed angry, frustrated, confused, resigned. This place is a mess, Leah told Jant whenever they were on the phones. He's going crazy. He's yelling at me and making me crazy. They're all going crazy. I swear it's like some kind of crazy shit is eating everyone up. Jan told her he was truly sorry to hear how bad it was for her and assured her repeatedly that he knew nothing more than what she already knew from the memos Tom was sending to Lehman employees. Memos in which he told them that the company was going through a bit of tough stretch, but they should be back on top in no time. Leah's circumstances saddened Jan. The fact that she was clinging to a job that made her miserable because she was still 5 years away from receiving Social Security. It bothered him that she couldn't quit her job even though her blood pressure was rising and her hair was falling out and she was getting lonely. 3 hours of sleep a night. But it wasn't his place to tell her anything about what Clark was saying or doing. He couldn't tell her that Clark was sometimes sleeping in the office. Couldn't tell her that Clark was sometimes sleeping in the office or going to the Chelsea Hotel some evenings for appointments that often lasted no more than an hour. He couldn't tell her that after these appointments he usually drove the bus back to the office where Clark probably continued working for more hours, his stress having been eased. His duty, he always reminded himself, was to protect Clark, not Leah. "Where are we going to, sir?" Jan asked on the last Thursday of August, holding the car door open in front of the Chelsea Hotel. Clark's appointment, that day, had lasted exactly an hour, but he had to turn to the cars, still seeming weary, his face tightly bound by perpetual exhaustion. It was as if his appointment had been only half effective. "Houston River Park," Clark said. "Hudson River Park, sir?" Jan asked, surprised the answer was in the office. "Yes, anywhere in the park, sir." "Go close 11th and 10th. Go somewhere near the piers." "Yes, sir." Jan dropped Clark off at the end of the Christopher Street and watched as he crossed the West Side Highway to the pier, his already slender shoulder sagging under the weight of the heat and the sun. "Where are you?" he called to ask Jan 10 minutes later. "Around the same area, sir," Jan replied. "I backed up into a good spot that opened up behind me. Listen, why don't you come join me? There's no need for you to sit in the car." "At the pier, sir?" "Yes, I'm sitting all the way at the front. Come and meet me here." Jan locked up the car and dashed across the highway toward the pier, where Clark was sitting on a bench, his jacket off, his face turned toward the city. When Jan got to the bench, he realized Clark's eyes were closed. He seemed to be finding respite in the bountiful breeze blowing toward them. For the first time in months, he looked relaxed as the wind tousled his hair and wiped his brow. Jan looked up at the empty sky, which bore no resemblance to the thick air below. In a couple of days August would be over, and yet the humidity was still dense. Though it felt good to him, the sultriness mingled with the wind blowing over the Atlantic-bound river. On the bench, Clark breathed in and out, and in and out, again and again. For 5 minutes, Jan stood next to him and waited, careful not to move and disturb him. "You're here," Clark said when he finally opened his eyes. "Have a seat." Jan sat down beside him, took off his jacket too. "Beautiful, huh?" Clark said as they watched the Hudson, nowhere as long, but every inch as purposeful and assured as the Nile and the Niger and the Limpopo and Zambezi. Jan nodded, though confused as to why he was there, sitting on a bench at a pier, gazing at the river with his boss. "It is very nice, sir. Though thought you might enjoy it, instead of just waiting on the street." Thank you, sir. I'm enjoying the fresh breeze. I did not even know there was a place like this in New York. It's a great park. If I could, I'd come here more often to watch the sunset. You watch sunset, huh? Nothing relaxes me more. Jan nodded and said nothing, though he thought about how funny it was that both Clark and Vince loved sunset. The only people he'd ever met who went out of their way to sit by a body of water and stare at the horizon. He wondered if Vince knew this about his father, and what difference it would make if he didn't know and then discovered it by chance. How differently Vince would feel about his father if he realized that they shared a great love for something only a silver of humans make a deliberate effort to see. Who went out of their way to sit on a by a body of water and stare at the horizon. He wondered if Vince knew this about his father and what difference it would make if he didn't know and then discovered it by chance. How differently Vince would feel about his father if he realized that they shared a great love for something only a silver sliver of humans make a deliberate effort to see. For a few minutes the man sat in silence, watching the river flowing leisurely, in no rush, and for its meeting with the ocean. "I'm sure you know by now that Vince will be moving to India in 2 weeks," Clark said. "No, sir, I did not know. India?" Clark nodded. "No more law school for him. He wants to wander the earth. He is a good boy, sir. He will come back safely to America when he is ready. Or maybe not. For a long time, that's fine. I'm not the first father to have a son who defined him and decide he wants to live his life in an un- unorthodox manner. I hope you are not too angry with him, sir. Actually, Cindy thinks I'm not angry enough, and that makes her angry, like somehow I'm giving up on him because I don't love him enough. But the thing is, I almost admire him. He's not afraid. No, there's something to be said for that. And he says, all I wanted was the life that I have right now. This exact life, this was what I wanted. It is a good life, sir. A very good life. Sometimes, but I can understand why Vince doesn't want it. Because these days I don't want it either. All this shit going on at Lehman, all this stuff we would never have done 20 years ago because we stood for something more. And now really dirty shit is becoming the norm all over all over the street. But try to show good sense. Talk of consequences. Have a far long-term outlook, and they look at you as if you've lost your marbles. Dan nodded. And I know Vince has got a point, but the problem is not some system. It is us, each of us. We've got to fix ourselves before we can fix the whole damn country. That's not happening on the street. It's not happening in Washington. It's not happening anywhere. It's not like what I'm saying it is new, but it's only getting worse. And 1 man or 2 men or 3 men cannot fix it. No, sir. But everything I have, I worked hard for, and I'm proud of, and I fight to the end to preserve it. Because when the life's good, it's very good, and the price I paid, that's just part of it. That's very true, sir. Jen said, nodding. When you become a husband and father, you paid a lot of prices. It's more than your duty as a husband and father. It's your duty to your parents too, your siblings. When I went to Stanford, I was going to study physics, become a professor like my dad. Then I saw what was possible on a professor's salary and what was possible on an investment banker's salary. Chose this path. I'm not going to sit here and be one of those self-righteous assholes because my original reason for choosing this career was never noble. I can say I didn't fantasize about the sports car and private jets, but it's different now. Now it means the world to me how well I taken care of my family. No matter how bad it gets at work, I know that at the end of the day, I can send my parents on vacation to see the world, pay for every medical bill that comes up, make sure my sister doesn't suffer because my husband's death, make sure my wife and sons have far more than what they need. That's what Vince doesn't understand. That you don't only do what makes you happy. You think about your parents too. Vince doesn't see this side of you, sir. He sees a father who works at a bank and makes money, but I tell him, I say, your parents have other side you do not see. because you are their child. It is only now that I'm old that I look at some things that my father did and I understand. I told him, I said, I'm not asking you to stay in law school and become a lawyer so you can be like him. I'm asking you because I know what it takes to be successful in this country. You got to separate yourself from the pack with a good education, a good paying career. I read about folks who thought it was all fun and games when they were younger and look at them now, barely getting by. Because unless you make a certain kind of money in this country, life can be brutal. And I don't ever want that for him. I don't ever want that for my son. Jen nodded, looking afar. For several minutes, the men were silent, just as the sun was one-third of the way below the low rises of New Jersey. They watched it as it went down ever so slowly, bidding them adieu, bidding the city adieu, until it rose again from behind the East River to bring a new day with its promises and heartbreaks, while Jen sat mesmerized by what he just witnessed. I know the sun comes up and go down, but I never knew that it does it so nicely. Amazing, isn't it, sir? Jen said after a brief silence. I think Vince will stay in India for a few months and run back to law school. I won't be surprised, Clark said with a laugh. I don't know how India is, Mr. Edward, but if there is a heat and mosquitoes there like we have in Cameroon, I will be picking it up at the airport before New Year. The men laughed together. I'll be picking it up at the airport before New Year. I will not worry about Vince for 1 minute, sir. Even if he stays, he will be happy. Look at me, sir. I'm in another country and I'm happy. That's one way. That's one way of looking at it. A man can find a home anywhere, sir. Funny, as I was thinking about Vince today, I wrote a poem about leaving home. You write poems, sir? Yes, but I'm no Shakespeare or Frost. Dan scratched his head. I'm sorry, sir, he said. I have heard a little about Shakespeare, but I don't know the other men. I did not make it that far in school. They were both great poets. I'm just saying my poetry is pretty remedial, but it keeps me going on many days. Jen nodded, and he could see that Clark could tell he didn't quite understand the last point either. You learn how to write poems in school, sir? He said. No, actually, I just started a few days ago. Few years ago, a colleague gave me this little book of poetry, which I thought was a rather not odd gift. Why would anyone think I could use a book of poetry? Maybe it was just one of those lazy gifts where people pull stuff off their shelves. A Christmas gift, sir. Yeah, anyway, I kept it on my desk, picked it up one day, and loved the poem so much that I decided to try writing one. Feels real good to just write out lines about whatever you're feeling. You should try it sometime. It sounds very good, sir. I wrote one for Cindy, but she didn't like it much, so I just write for myself now. I'll be glad to read one, sir. Really, I can show you. Damn it, I said, looking at his watch. Didn't realize it was getting this late. Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry, sir. I should have kept my eyes up. I was just talking and talking without paying any attention to the time. No, I'm glad we talked. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope I didn't put you in an awkward position, throwing out my feelings about work and shit. No, sir, please. Mr. Edward, thank you so much for inviting me here. Well, thank you for listening, Clark said, smiling. And I'll be glad to recite the poem to you. It's called Home. And if you don't like it, I'd rather you don't say anything. Yes, sir, Jen said, smiling too. I will not say anything whatsoever. Okay, here goes. Home will never go away. Home will be here when you come back. You may go to bring back fortune. You may go to escape misfortune. You may even go just because you want to go. But when you come back, we hope when you will come back, hope will still be here.